In late 1927, a wealthy steel tycoon named Eben Byers swallowed his first dose of certified radioactive water. It came in a small 2-ounce bottle labeled Radithor. Inside was triple distilled water laced with real radium-226 and radium-228 isotopes. It wasn't a fake remedy. It actually contained liquid radiation. Byers believed he was drinking a cure for a nagging injury, a daily tonic that promised youth and energy. He had no idea what he was putting in his body. Over the next 3 years, Byers wouldn't just try the medicine, he'd drink over 1,400 bottles, unknowingly poisoning his own bones from the inside out. To understand how this happened, you have to look at the man himself. Eben Byers wasn't a desperate patient grasping at straws. He was wealthy, powerful, and deeply invested in his own physical health. Byers was the chairman of the A.M. Byers Steel Company. He had money, prestige, and access to the best care in the country. But he wasn't just a corporate titan sitting behind a desk. He was an elite athlete who won the U.S. Amateur Golf Championship in 1906. Physical strength and peak performance were central to his identity. In the 1920s, the wealthy elite treated modern science as a playground for self-improvement. They wanted high-tech ways to boost their energy, restore their youth, and stay ahead of the game. For a man like Byers, taking an expensive, cutting-edge tonic wasn't just acceptable. It was exactly what someone in his position was supposed to do. The product Byers eventually turned to was called Radithor. Most health tonics in the 1920s were completely harmless scams. They were just plain water, alcohol, or cheap herbs wrapped in big promises. But Radithor was different. It actually contained what was printed on the label, and that made it deadly. The man behind it was William J.A. Bailey. Bailey presented himself to the public as a doctor, but he had no medical degree whatsoever. What we know is that he was a Harvard dropout who had already been convicted of fraud. He wasn't a man of science. He was a salesman who saw an opportunity in the public's fascination with radiation. Unlike the fake remedies on the market, Bailey's tonic contained real radioactive isotopes. Every 2-ounce bottle of Radithor was infused with radium-226 and radium-228. Bailey sold it as a cure-all, claiming it could reinvigorate the body and restore lost energy. Because real radium was expensive, Radithor was sold as a high-end luxury item for wealthy clients. People exactly like Eben Byers. In late 1927, Byers was traveling home from the annual Harvard-Yale football game. On the train, he fell from his sleeping berth and injured his arm. The pain lingered, and standard treatments didn't bring much relief. That was when his physician recommended a new tonic, Radithor. The promise was simple. It would soothe his persistent arm pain and restore his physical vigor. Byers took his first dose, and he was convinced it worked. He felt an immediate surge of energy. What began as a fix for a hurt arm quickly became a heavy daily habit. Byers didn't just take Radithor when he felt sore. He drank it constantly, often consuming 2 or 3 bottles every single afternoon. He kept cases of it in his office, sent bottles to his friends, and praised it to everyone he met. Between 1927 and 1931, Byers consumed an estimated 1,400 to 2,500 2-ounce bottles of Radithor. Day after day, for 3 solid years, he poured real radioactive water down his throat. He believed he was drinking a luxury health elixir. In reality, he was flooding his system with isotopes that had nowhere to go. Once swallowed, those isotopes did not just pass through his body. Radium accumulates directly in bone tissue. The The radium-226 and radium-228 from every single bottle Byers drank settled deep into his skeleton. Month after month, trapped inside his bone tissue, those radioactive elements sat there continuously, irradiating his entire body from the inside out. By 1931, the cumulative damage reached a horrific tipping point. The sheer volume of radiation caused severe bone decay across his skeleton. What Byers experienced was radiation-induced necrosis, which is the physical death of living bone tissue. His bones were literally dying while he was still using the tonic. The destruction was most severe in his head. The bone structure of his skull began to disintegrate, breaking down until parts of it simply hollowed out. But the worst damage occurred in his face. The radiation completely destroyed the dense bone of his lower jaw. Over time, his lower jaw disintegrated entirely, leaving him grotesquely disfigured. The former elite athlete had consumed so much liquid radiation that his own skeleton was crumbling from within. He had spent 3 years paying top dollar for health and energy, only to end up with a disintegrating skull and no lower jaw. By late 1930, the Federal Trade Commission had opened an investigation into William J. A. Bailey and his radioactive water. They needed legal testimony from Radithor's most prominent user. So an FTC attorney named Joseph Wynn traveled directly to Byers' home. What Wynn saw inside that house provided the first official eyewitness record of the damage. Byers was wrapped in heavy surgical bandages, sitting in bed. As the attorney took his deposition, he documented a scene straight out of a horror movie. Most of Byers' lower jaw was completely gone. The radiation had eaten deep into his skeletal system, leaving visible holes scattered across his skull. He was so weak he could barely form words to answer Wynn's questions. For years, Bailey had marketed Radithor as a harmless energy tonic that gave men back their youth. Now, a government official was sitting in a quiet room, taking notes as a millionaire's body broke down in real time. Wynn's report gave the FTC the concrete proof it needed. The miracle cure was actively killing people. How did a man like Byers end up drinking a deadly poison every single day? It came down to a quiet financial arrangement. William J. A. Bailey didn't just sell Radithor directly to consumers. He built a network of doctors to do the selling for him. For every bottle a physician prescribed, Bailey gave them a 17% kickback. What remains uncertain is the exact motive of Byers' own doctor, C.C. Moyer. One theory holds that Moyer genuinely believed in the medical promises of radium, completely duped by Bailey's pseudoscience. Another suggests he was simply greedy, quietly collecting a fee on the hundreds of bottles Byers consumed. No one has ever confirmed which was true. As details of Byers' condition leaked out, the press jumped on the scandal. It's often cited that the Wall Street Journal ran the famous headline, "The radium water worked fine until his jaw came off." But historians point out that exact phrasing was actually a popular summary of the article rather than a print headline. Either way, the message caught on. The public finally realized that America's favorite energy tonic was fatal. For Eben Byers, that realization came far too late. On March 31, 1932, he died at 51 years old. His official cause of death was listed as radiation poisoning, which had triggered organ failure and aggressive cancer. Because his body was emitting such high levels of radiation, standard burial wasn't an option. His remains were sealed inside a heavy, lead-lined casket and buried at Allegheny Cemetery in Pittsburgh. That wasn't the end of his story. In 1965, an MIT scientist named Dr. Robley Evans decided to test how long radium remains trapped in human bone tissue. He received permission to exhume Byers' remains. What we know from Evans's study is that even after 33 years underground, Byers' skeleton was still dangerously radioactive. The liquid radiation he drank had outlived him, practically unchanged. Byers' horrific death shocked the American public in a way no medical warning ever could. It laid bare a terrifying truth. Federal regulators had virtually no power to stop deadly patent medicine from reaching store shelves. Public outrage over his ordeal changed that forever. It led directly to the passage of the 1938 Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, finally giving the government authority to demand proof that a drug was safe before anyone could sell it. Eben Byers paid for those protections with his life.